Profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Good afternoon and welcome to Engage for Success radio show number 580, Business Growth, Leadership and Personal Development. Today we're going to be talking about true leadership's lasting and positive impact. I'm Jo Dodds, your host for today. I'm an engagement consultant working within the Engage for Success core team. The Engage for Success movement is an inclusive movement committed to the idea that there is a better way to work by releasing more of the capability and potential of people at work. We spread the word about employee engagement and shine a light on good practice, inspiring people and workplaces to thrive. And we're widely supported across the UK, involving the public, private and third sectors. If you go to our website, engageforsuccess.org, you can use the link at the bottom of the page to join our newsletter list, and all our social media links are there too. So my guest today is Dennis Franczak. Welcome, Dennis. Great to have you with me.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Lovely. So let's start by you introducing yourself and telling us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am a 20-year CEO. I have run and operated a ad agency in the United States for over the last 20 years, and I started that agency um, 2005, and in that time, we've grown to be a national player in industries such as energy, entertainment, higher education, and retail and travel and tourism. So we've carved out a nice little niche for ourselves. And along the way, we had some exceptional growth, and we also had, some downtimes, and been able to weather that. And the agency is doing very well. But also, I have branched out and I founded a company called Bright Matter Advisors, which advises CEOs and business executives on how to lead with impact and leave a legacy. And that's something that's really a passion for me, is to help people do things that have greater impact than themselves so that they can help others and also leave a positive legacy for themselves and their family.
Lovely. So should we start there? Why did that come about?
Well, it came about because I experienced a burnout episode 3 years ago. I had gotten the agency in a place where we were preparing for succession, meaning I had my management team in place and I was ready to take on a more of a chairman's role. And what I realized is I had totally burned myself out getting to that place. And I decided to take a 6 month sabbatical and completely shut off work and focus on myself, my own healing, um, and the things that I needed to do to become a better person. And that was something that over the years I started to lose myself as a leader because of all the pressures that I was putting on myself and the company just to perform. And I was having these little mini breaks all along the way. I liken it to, like, you look at a circuit breaker and all the little fuses were going off. And I didn't realize any of them were going off until the whole fuse box blew up.
Yeah.
So I had to take a reset. And after I did all that work, said the thing that will keep me going and keep me leading at the highest levels is if I'm doing something that is with purpose beyond myself and money and the prestige that comes with that. It's about doing things that help others so that when you're ready to retire and eventually we all pass, we're remembered for doing something that has impact. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is something that drives me now every day. And I work with a lot of executives who have just been wandering aimlessly in the woods, trying to figure out why they're, doing what they're doing. And ultimately, we find when I speak to these that their companies aren't performing to where they can. They're unhappy. The people around them are unhappy, and they need a reset. And that's what I do, is I help them reset, refocus, so that they can become the best versions of themselves. and do something that will keep them focused on positivity and having positive impact on the world.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you do that? And I guess some of it will be connected to what you did for your sabbatical. So what in practical terms are you doing with those CEOs?
Well, we focus on three areas. The first one is we focus on them, right? And this is part life coaching, part business strategy, part therapy, if you so to speak. I had to do all of this myself, so it's nothing that I haven't done. And what I do in my program is try to condense you know, the 6 months of what I did into something that's digestible, for business executives and what their schedules allow. So the
Mm-hmm.
first phase is I work on them, and that's where we get to know each other. And I think an area where I differentiate is that I've actually sat in their chair, having been a CEO, having started multiple companies. I can empathize with the fear, the insecurity. I also understand what drives them. And I get to really know them at that level. And it's really about trying to understand why they do what they do, what were the steps that they took to get there, and what were the factors that built them up to be as successful as they are. And they're often driven by childhood, things that they experienced growing up, where they went to college, how they were educated, their early work experience. And during that, I find patterns. So I find things that have themes that I then take and identify with these executives, and then we start to boil through each of those patterns. Like, for example, I was driven by this intense desire to be a provider, right? So I wanted to be able to just be able to provide for my family, make sure that they had everything that they need, even at the expense of my needs. And that was kind of drilled into me by my father. He
Mm-hmm.
was always busy, he was always involved in multiple things. And I viewed that as a child through the lens like he's just trying to provide for us. And it turns out later as I grew older, there was other dynamics there, but it was all about trying to be the best provider. He took a lot of pride in that, and his father before him took a lot of pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
So fear of failure was something that was intrinsic to me. And I guess as I started to build my companies, I had that underlying fear all the way through of, we were multi-million dollar agency doing great work, yet I was afraid we would go out of business tomorrow, even though it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't real. And what happens over time is you start to develop habits and interactions with others that are based on that, and it's not always good. And I drove my people very hard. I was demanding. I wasn't as empathetic as I should have been. I let pressure get to me. And as I went later on, getting closer to basically my burnout episode, I was the exact opposite of the type of leader that I wanted to be. And it was all
Mm-hmm.
because I was operating from this fear of failure, that I wouldn't be able to provide for my family if the company didn't succeed. And there were other
Mm-hmm.
factors as well. So I try to help executives identify that, because as soon as they can understand where their motivations are, we then take that to the next phase and say, okay, what's that relationship with you and your business and your career? And so then we start to reframe how they can still meet their needs, but do it in a way that has better impact around others. So phase one is drilling into themselves, and that's really hard work. It takes 2 months for us to go through that work. The
Mm-hmm.
next 2 months is establishing a healthy balance and relationship with themselves and what they do for work. So that is another whole set of work. It's about goal setting, it's about prioritizing, it's about trying to do things in a way that start to give them some fulfillment that they've not had previously. Once that work is done, and that often dives into what I call the side projects where, oh, okay, there's certain elements of their business or things they're doing at work that need attention, and we drill into ways to solve those. And in
Mhm.
some cases, if it's somebody that owns a company, I'm able to provide support in that area, right? They might be overworked, they might need some help, they might need advisory, and I can do that work for them, um, to help them achieve that goal of having a balance between their work and themselves so that their family, the people that are in their lives, have just a better experience being around them. And I always tell myself in these phases, if I can just help one executive, I'm helping hundreds of people in that executive's lives. So there's
Mhm.
a bit of a pay it forward. The last phase of the work I do is about legacy. So we start to say, okay, now you totally know who you are and what your motivations are, what got you to where you are. We've gotten you into a place now where you feel a sense of balance between how you work, what you do, and how it impacts others. The last part is, what do you want to be remembered for? And it's so interesting when we start to go into that phase because a lot of people don't ever have a clue. And I had a story of a mentor who I really enjoyed working for. And when he passed, and this was a man who had an impact on a very large population of people, and there should have been 1,000 people at his funeral, and I went to it and there was less than 50. And this was
Wow.
somebody who
Mhm.
had done some great things, but the last 15 years of his life he was spent isolating and not treating people as well as he could have. And that made me really sad because he was a great man to me, but I also know that he wasn't great to other people. And I don't
Mhm.
think that had he framed that again, he was somebody that really believed in what he was doing, and he didn't get to leave the legacy that I know that he would have wanted to. And I witnessed that. And I also looked at my own life and my own experience, and I said, I'm going to end up like him if I don't reset. And so I work with these
Mhm.
executives in that last phase to say, what are you doing with purpose? Or what can you do with purpose that's also going to have a positive impact on others? What's the story of your life that you want to write about? And I make them literally write their obituary as it would be today. And then I say, how do you want it to be in 20 years or whenever
Yeah.
and it is an
Mhm. Mhm.
exercise that when they do it, they cannot believe that they've missed out on starting that work a lot sooner.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for me, I manifested itself in different ways. So during this journey, um, I lost my marriage, very stressful time. And during that, I said, I need to do something that helps others. So one of the things I found was music. So I used to be a DJ in college, gave it up. And then about a year and a half ago, once I had, reprioritized, really focused on myself and my business, and I basically followed the same program I help other executives. I said, what else can I do? So I started playing music, and I was doing a show, and I met a young autistic boy who was watching me work. And during that show, I asked him to come up. His father told me that he was autistic and that music was a main way of him to communicate. And I
Mhm.
started talking to him. I said, you want to play with me? And he jumped on and he was playing with the mixing board, and we formed a friendship there. And from that, I said, what if I helped other charities and organizations through the power of music? So I started a nonprofit called DJs for a Cause, And what we do is we partner with other nonprofits, charities, foundations to create events with music that in turn draw more attendees, helps them raise more money, so that ultimately the money that they raise through our efforts goes to help their constituents. And we've done half a dozen events in our first year, and it's making an impact. We've worked with, in the United States, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, which is a huge hospital network for children. We've raised money for autism. We are doing one this weekend for domestic violence as part of honoring International Women's Day, which is coming up on March 8th.
Hmm.
So we're using, and then my business experience of networking and connections and relationships and being able to run a solid business allow us to scale it in a way that's going to really help many people. And we're going to have chapters in multiple cities, and we're basically creating a movement here in the United States. And it was all driven by my desire to want to do something positive for other people before I'm ready to go, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's very rewarding work. And it balances perfectly with the what I'm trying to do in my professional life and my work life. And it's
Hmm.
also giving me a chance personally to just kind of step back and say, it's, this world is bigger than me. And I have a way of doing things with impact that are going to help others. And at the same time, it helps me.
Yes. Is there a way for CEOs to do something from a legacy point of view that doesn't involve something on such a grand scale that as you're doing? Because that,
Right.
I can't see everybody wanting to or having the time or whatever, but maybe wanting to make changes within their organization or much more sort of local
Abs-
initiative.
Absolutely. One of the best things to do. I work with some other executives who, of course, like they don't want to do something that grandiose, but I'll say, have you ever thought of doing Big Brother or Big Sister? And they never have before. Or have they thought of joining a youth incubator startup foundation where they can help young people become masters of their craft and learn things like AI and computers and programming and skills at a young age that they would normally have to wait longer for.
Hmm.
So it can be on a much smaller scale, mentoring a junior person in your organization who you view that one day could be a CEO. I've been honored in my career to have had people work for me who have gone on and started their own companies and been very successful. And I
Yes.
knew they were going to be successful. And I was fortunate to see that talent and nurture it in them and give them the framework for them to eventually go do it on their own.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that there's so many different ways, and it's really about each person identifying a way where they can make the most impact.
Yes. Yeah. So these CEOs that are coming to you, are they coming because they're having their own version of a burnout, or are they coming because they're interested in legacy, or is there another reason, or is it all of it?
No, it's typically somebody who is in a phase of their life and career where they feel they're stalled,
Hmm.
or they've experienced some of these signs of burnout, and people are telling them that it would be wise to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when somebody tells them that, because we as executives, sometimes we have egos, right?
Hmm.
We all do, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, what got me over it was I just saw my life crashing into the rocks, so I had to do something. But other people aren't so as open to say I need help. But if somebody's asking you and telling you that they're giving you feedback that that you would benefit from talking to somebody, it's safe to pick up a phone and talk to somebody who's been in their shoes and who has their experience and understands what they're going through, and
Mhm.
just see where
Mhm.
it goes. I don't charge for a phone call.
Mhm.
For me, I've had a lot of talks with executives and they come because they feel empty. They're getting up in the morning, they're doing their routine, their company's doing fine, but they're miserable and they get up and they do it again and again, and they're just wandering aimlessly in the forest looking for purpose. And what happens is when they're doing that, they're not leading with impact. Their companies are typically underperforming, and you can see it in the data. When I look at the companies that these executives are running, you can see the little signs all building up in the data. And once they see that, they're like, oh my gosh, I am at risk here for not having the legacy that I want to leave if I keep going and doing the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then it's about trust building. So when we go into that you phase, which is the very first part, it's all about building trust and rapport so that they're being completely honest with me and themselves about what's been holding them back. And it's a
Mhm.
cathartic, intense couple of months.
Yes. Yeah. So if there's CEOs listening who are feeling that they have, these issues, or they're getting close to burnout, or they just don't feel like they're sort of achieving what they want to be, and they're not in a position to come to you, what sort of things would you suggest they do?
I would say join a peer group. I think a peer group is something that, they've been around forever, but they really serve a purpose. It's because you can realize really quickly in the peer group is there's other people going through the same struggle you are. And it's funny that when I look back on the peer groups I'm in, they all could have been clients of mine. you know, I didn't know what I was going to be doing back then, but I was like, now looking back, we were all just on hamster wheels, just trying to get by. And that was the reason we came together. And hopefully within that group, I found a couple of people who really helped me outside the group. And that was something that was really important. So if you don't feel like hiring bright matter advisors, then join a peer group and find somebody that you really connect with and start to lean on each other.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
we are not like, I guarantee out of your listeners, probably at least 30 to 40% of these listeners are in some kind of like place where they wish they were doing a lot better, or they don't quite feel good about themselves, or they don't feel right. And one of the things that we didn't talk about, which I think would be important, Joe, is the signs, right? Here are some signs. If you're starting to not care about things that you used to care about, that's a sign that you might be starting to head towards a burnout. If you're not reading emails that you used to read, or your staff is asking you to engage more than they've ever engaged, these are signs that you're starting to subtly, without you even knowing, not being at your very best. One of the signs that I missed was when I would go home and the kids would ask when they were younger, they'd say, Dad, play with us. And I would just be too busy in my laptop.
Yeah.
And then eventually they stop asking. And that's the worst. Same thing happens with your staff. If you start to see your relationship with your staff change, that means there's something going on, most likely with you if you're in a leadership position, and it's something you need to look for. These
Hmm.
signs are subtle, but if you spot them, you know. And it's not that hard to get help. There's people that are in your shoes and that can help you by just talking to them. We
Yes.
take a more clinical approach to it in terms of we run them through a program, and that typically is something that is for those who really have lost their way. And we're here for them. And I even do one-off phone calls. Like I have a couple clients, they call me once a month to check
Hmm.
in.
Mhm.
And so not everybody needs to go through the whole program, but you need to be talking to somebody that's not afraid to be vulnerable and say, hey, I've been there. I've made these same mistakes. Here's what I learned. Here's how you can take what I learned and help yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Lovely, thank you. We've just got a couple of minutes left before the end of the show. What sort of final words have you got for our audience?
So I think for your audience, I'd like to leave one thing. We're on this planet a limited amount of time. And how we spend that time with our families, our careers, and others, you have the power and the control to define what that is. And I just ask that if you're feeling like you're not living with purpose or you're just kind of going through the motions, take a step back, examine it, and start to figure out what you can do to change that so that you leave something for the people that are in your life when you're no longer there.
Thank you. That's a sort of profound ending, isn't it, to the show? Thank you so much, Dennis. Thanks for your time today. It's been really helpful.
Well, I hope it helps your listeners, and thank you so much for having me.
And just to let you know that next week, Roger is coming to talk to Andy Gorham about how leaders can cull the cynics, apathetic, and naysayers. So they'll be back next week.
Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We did it.